Imagine a bite force so powerful it could crush a sedan like a soda can. Picture a shadow moving beneath the waves. A biological war machine that dominated the oceans for 26.5 million years. During that time, nothing dared to swim across its path and live to tell the tale. We are not talking about the T-Rex. We are not talking about the mosasaurs. We are talking about Otatus Megalodon, the super shark. It's the uncrowned king of the Cenozoic ocean. If today's great white shark is a frightening predator, the Megalodon was a nightmare. The latest scientific reconstructions have pushed its size estimates to terrifying new heights, a maximum length of 24 meters, nearly 80 feet, and a weight of up to 103 tons. To put that in perspective, it was twice as heavy as any giant marine reptile from the age of dinosaurs. It was a literal god of the ocean made of cartilage and muscle. But this brings us to the greatest paradox in paleontology. How does a creature with no natural enemies, a predator, standing at the absolute pinnacle of the food chain, simply vanish from the face of the earth? It wasn't killed by a fiery asteroid. It wasn't hunted by humans. The answer lies in an invisible enemy that even an 8-centimeter tooth couldn't crush temperature. Why did a 100-ton titan fall to a simple drop in the thermometer? Is it possible that its massive size, the very weapon that secured its dominance, became its death sentence when the oceans turned cold? Today, we are going to solve the coldest case file in the history of the deep. To understand why the Megalodon fell, we first have to understand just how high it stood. The Megalodon ruled the oceans from the Oligocene to the Pliocene epochs, about 28 to 3.6 million years ago. This was the golden age of the ocean, a time when both mammals and sharks entered an evolutionary arms race for absolute size. Let's run the numbers, because they are staggering. In our previous deep dive, we met the Mosasaurus, the marine reptile king of the Cretaceous. At 17 meters, it was a leviathan. But the Megalodon? It dwarfed the mosasaurs. Current estimates suggest the Megalodon could grow 5 meters longer than the largest marine reptile. And compared to the modern great white shark, there is no comparison. A full-grown great white 6 meters would look like a toddler swimming next to a Megalodon. A great white could comfortably swim inside the open jaws of a Megalodon without touching the teeth. Speaking of jaws, this was the most devastating weapon nature ever designed. Its mouth spanned nearly 3 meters wide, lined with rows of triangular, serrated teeth that grew up to 7 inches 18 centimeters long. These teeth weren't designed to catch slippery fish. They were thick, robust, and built to withstand the shock of impact. They were designed to shear through thick blubber and crush the rib cages of whales. But the Megalodon wasn't just big. It was biologically advanced. Unlike the marine reptiles of the past, which were cold-blooded and sluggish in colder water, the Megalodon possessed a superpower shared by modern great whites and tuna: regional endothermy. This means it wasn't fully cold-blooded. It could generate its own body heat to keep critical organs, its eyes, its brain, and its stomach warmer than the surrounding water. This made the Megalodon a high-performance hunter. It could swim faster, see better, and digest food more efficiently than any reptile ever could. This high-octane physiology was fueled by a specific food source: whales. The Neogene Ocean was a buffet. It was teeming with small to medium-sized baleen whales like Piscobalena. The Megalodon evolved specifically to exploit this surplus of high-calorie blubber. It was the result of a perfect storm: a warm ocean, supercharged metabolism, and an endless supply of slow-moving whales. It was the ultimate biological machine. But this perfection came with a hidden cost. The Megalodon was designed for a specific world, a world of warm water and abundant fat. And as we know, the only constant on Earth is change. The extinction of the Megalodon didn't happen in a single day like the asteroid strike that wiped out the dinosaurs. It was a gradual extinction, a slow, agonizing strangulation that lasted for millions of years. The true enemy of the Megalodon was the climate. During the Pliocene epoch, the Earth began to undergo a massive global cooling event. The Isthmus of Panama closed, altering global ocean currents. Ice sheets began to expand at the poles, and this triggered a catastrophic chain reaction for the warm water giant. first blow was the Great Migration of the food supermarket. The megalodons preferred prothobaline whales were adapted. As the oceans cooled, the rich blooms of plankton and krill shifted towards the poles, to the Arctic and the Antarctic. To survive, the whales evolved to be larger, to retain heat, and crucially, they began to migrate into these freezing waters to feed. But the megalodon could not follow them. Despite its regional endothermy, the megalodon was still fundamentally a shark. Its body was optimized for tropical and subtropical waters. It could handle a cool current, but it could not survive the freezing temperatures of the polar regions. Imagine an invisible wall in the ocean, a thermal barrier. The whales swam right through it, escaping into the cold safety of the poles. The megalodon was left behind at the equator, patrolling an increasingly empty ocean. The second blow was the destruction of the nurseries. Megalodons didn't just give birth anywhere. Like modern sharks, they relied on shallow, warm coastal waters to raise their pups. These nurseries were safe havens where baby megalodons, already 2 meters long at birth, could hunt fish without being eaten by other predators. But as the world cooled, water was locked up in the expanding polar ice caps. Sea levels dropped dramatically. The shallow continental shelves, the nurseries dried up or became too cold. Without safe harbors, the next generation of megalodons faced higher mortality rates. The population began to age, with fewer and fewer young surviving to adulthood to replace the dying giants. Finally, the energy trap snapped shut. We have to remember, a 100-ton shark is a metabolic furnace. It is not a crocodile that can wait a year for a meal. It is an active high-energy hunter that requires tens of thousands of calories every single day just to keep swimming. When the prey disappeared, Megalodon's size, once its greatest asset, became its greatest liability. Think of it like a heavy-duty semi-truck that requires 50 gallons of diesel a day. That truck is powerful and unstoppable as long as fuel is cheap. But if the gas stations suddenly close, that massive engine becomes useless. Meanwhile, a small economy car, like a smaller shark, can keep running on fumes.
It saves
the Megalodon
energy by
was the heavy
barely
truck.
moving.
As the whales left and the waters cooled, the Megalodon was pushed into chronic starvation. It was a king trapped in a crumbling castle, watching its subjects flee to a land it could never enter. It didn't lose a fight. It simply ran out of fuel. But starvation and cold weren't the only things killing the Megalodon. While the giant was weakening, a new generation of predators was rising to challenge its crown. The Neogene Ocean was a crowded arena. The Megalodon wasn't the only monster in town. It shared the waters with Leviathan melville, a sperm whale with teeth the size of bowling pins. It had to watch out for Prehistoric. It's a 13-meter caiman with a bite force that rivaled the T-Rex. But these were clashes of brute strength. The Megalodon could handle brute strength. The real death blow came from a smaller, faster, and smarter rival, the ancestor of the modern Orca killer whale and the rise of the great white shark, about 5 million years ago. As the Megalodon populations were fragmenting, the ancestors of the great white and early killer whales appeared on the scene. Individually, they were snacks for a but collectively, they represented a technological upgrade that made the Megalodon obsolete. The Orcas brought a weapon that the Megalodon couldn't counter: pack intelligence. While the Megalodon was a solitary hunter, roaming the oceans alone like a submarine, Orcas operated like a wolf pack. They communicated. They coordinated. They strategized. In a resource-scarce ocean, efficiency is everything. A pack of Orcas could locate, herd, and kill a medium-sized whale much faster than a solitary Megalodon could. They were outcompeting the giant for the limited food supply. By the time the Megalodon arrived at the scene, the table had already been cleared. Furthermore, these new rivals had the temperature advantage. As warm-blooded mammals, ancient killer whales could thrive in the freezing waters where the prey was hiding. They could raid the Megalodon's territory in the warm waters, eat the available food, and then retreat into the cold zones where the Megalodon physically could not follow. They were fighting a guerrilla war. The Megalodon was losing ground on every front. And let's not forget the juveniles. Remember those disappearing nurseries? As the shallow waters vanished, Baby megalodons were forced into open water sooner. There, they weren't apex predators. They were vulnerable. Fast, agile schools of ancient great whites and orcas likely preyed heavily on the young megalodons. They were cutting off the giant's future at the source. The megalodon found itself caught in a deadly pincer movement. On one side, the climate was shrinking its habitat and moving its food. On the other side, evolution had produced a faster, a smarter model of predator that was stealing whatever food was left. The megalodon didn't lose a single epic battle.
Despite the pain.
It suffered a death by 1,000 cuts. It was too big to adapt, too hungry to wait, and too lonely to fight back against the coordinated gangs of the new ocean. The story of the megalodon teaches us a harsh truth about evolution. Gigantism is a trap. We often look at massive animals, dinosaurs, whales, giant sharks, and see them as the winners of evolution. But biologically speaking, being a giant is a higher risk gamble. It is an all-in bet on a stable environment. When the world is warm and food is abundant, being big is the ultimate advantage. You have no predators, you control the territory, and you can eat anything you want. It is a fair weather strategy. But when the weather changes, that size becomes a burden. The megalodon suffered from what biologists call the K-selection curse. Animals like the megalodon likely grew very slowly, took decades to reach sexual maturity, and had very few offspring. They invested a massive amount of energy into each individual baby. In contrast, smaller sharks reproduce faster and require less energy to reach adulthood. When the environment crashed, the megalodon couldn't evolve fast enough to save itself. Its generation time was too long. It was like trying to turn the Titanic around to avoid an iceberg. By the time it realized the danger, it was physically too massive to change course. This highlights the fatal flaw of overspecialization. The megalodon had evolved into a whale-killing specialist. Its teeth, its size, its metabolism, everything was tuned to hunt large, blubber-rich mammals in warm water. It was a master of one specific trade. But the ancestors of the great white shark were generalists. They were smaller. They could eat seals, fish, dead whales, or squid. They could live in warm water or cool water. They were the jack of all trades. When the whale market crashed, the specialist went bankrupt. But the generalist survived. This is the recurring pattern we see throughout Earth's history. From the T-Rex to the Mosasaurus, and now the megalodon. The planet Earth is volatile. It freezes, it burns, it shifts. In such a chaotic system, the ultimate survival trait isn't strength, it's flexibility. The megalodon didn't do anything wrong. It played the game of evolution perfectly for the Miocene era. It just became too big to fail in a world that decided to rewrite the rules of economics. It is a reminder that in nature, nothing is permanent. The crown of the apex predator is always borrowed. Eventually, the rent comes due.
Case
So what is the
closed.
final verdict on the Otodus megalodon? It wasn't defeated by a stronger monster. It wasn't destroyed by a catastrophic explosion. It was defeated by the one thing it couldn't fight: change. The megalodon is the ultimate tragedy of the natural world. It spent millions of years perfecting itself to be the king of a warm ocean. But when that ocean turned cold, its perfection became its prison. A few degrees of temperature extinguished the fiercest fire the ocean has ever known. But this story isn't just about a dead shark. It is a warning. Today we share the planet with new giants. The blue whale, the elephant, the rhinoceros. Like the megalodon, they are majestic, but they are fragile. They require vast territories and specific climates. The fossil record of the megalodon stands as a monolith, reminding us that no matter how big you are never immune to the planet's mood swings. The ocean remains the last great frontier. We have explored less than 20% of it. Because of this vastness, many people love to dream. They ask, could the megalodon still be out there, hiding in some deep, warm trench that we haven't found yet? Science says no. Thermodynamics says no. But the human imagination? That always says maybe. What do you think? Is the king truly gone? Or is he just waiting in the dark? Let me know your theories in the comments below if you enjoyed this deep dive into the jaws of history. Please crush that like button and subscribe to join our expedition. We have many more monsters to uncover. Stay curious, stay skeptical, and don't go into the water alone.